Hey, thanks for joining me today for episode number 71 of Podcasting Your Brand. I'm your host, producer Jemmy, providing learning lessons for you to podcast your brand. And today I'm going to be bringing you my next Podcasting 101 topic, YouTube for podcasting, my advice recently shared with my Flint Stone Media clients. This episode is brought to you by my own brand, Flint Stone Media. Listen in and let's do this. First, by starting with one of my daily tips. Hey, it's producer Jemmy with your tip on mobile podcasting today. And I want to encourage you to do something aside from just preparing for the episode as you know the content is going to be. So you know what stops you're going to make if you're doing a travel adventure show, or you know what guests you're about to head out the door to go meet at their place and interview. But in spite of all that, despite all that, aside from all that, also capture things in the moment. So some of the best content we had on Finding Florida was the random stuff, like the random interview of the drunk girls on the bus that we met. That was really fun. Or because my co-host and I have such different backgrounds, similar hearts, but such different backgrounds, different perspectives. Some of the best content was just between he and I in between stops in the car talking between ourselves. So if you've just left a great interview, capture your thoughts right afterwards. Capture your thoughts on their space and how you think it relates to who they were and how they came across in that interview. Be in the moment as much as you are prepared. Come back every day for more tips, podcastingyourbrand.com. I'm producer Jemmy. So be sure to subscribe to me on Instagram, TikTok if it's still around, Clapper, YouTube, all the social medias so that you get all of my tips and you get them first. Okay, so let's first take care of some quick housekeeping. I want to make sure that you know of how you can work with me in a group setting. I have really awesome workshops. So if you haven't yet launched your show, I have my launched workshop mastermind. It is awesome. And so you can learn how to launch your podcast in 7 days with me. So that's great. The other option, if you already have a podcast, is my podcast maximization workshop, where you can learn how to maximize the potential of your podcast. So you can find out information for both and sign up for both at toppodcastworkshop.com. Secondly, I want to make sure that you know that I am extremely honored and privileged to be representing podcasting at the one and only podcast panel at the upcoming Mom 2.0 Summit. So this is the a huge summit for mom entrepreneurs or people wanting to sell to mom entrepreneurs. It's massive. So I'm really looking forward to it this May in Scottsdale, Arizona. If you want more information or to get a ticket and join me there, you can go to flintstonemedia.com/mom2. And last but not least, I want to mention a project from my friend Alexandra White. She's doing incredible work in the world of audio drama, and she does work that supports the LGBT community, the BIPOC community in particular. She's an amazing storyteller. So I want to make sure that you know about her project called Divine Instruments of Redemption. She's right now in a fundraising mode. So if you want to get more information about her project, it looks amazing, has real voice actors and real talent behind it, just go to the show notes, because I have a link in there for you to just check it out, and you can send her some support. So I am so proud of you, Alexandra. Keep it going. All right, now let's get on to today's lesson, because this is a very exciting time in podcasting as YouTube is leaning into our medium. So let me tell you some of what I shared with my clients recently in a webinar. So more and more of us podcasters have been adopting video over these last few years. And I'm a firm believer, I haven't asked anybody at YouTube, but I'm a firm believer that this is why we're seeing YouTube make the moves that YouTube is making. So let's talk about what moves they are making, because they're finally finding a way to embrace us. They needed to be true to themselves. They're a video-based platform. And so a lot of podcasters were just taking our shows, the audio, and marrying them to a static image. That wasn't good enough for YouTube to play with us in their sandbox. But now that enough of us have adopted video, like I did recently for season 3 of the show, more and more now YouTube's like, oh, okay, there's more of you here. We can support you. We can now put effort behind this community and embracing this community and bringing them on board. So it is really exciting. So a couple of essential bits of news, some not so new. This may not surprise you, but it's key to know, because if you don't know, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world behind just Google. So that means people are going to YouTube to search for stuff. And if they're searching for something that relates to your podcast, you want your podcast to be found. So it's best to have your show on there somehow. We're going to talk about how to get into it. Also, YouTube is initiating a podcasting program that will bring podcasting into their platform natively. That means they are really, really leaning into this like we've never seen before. They're going to be having RSS feeds as part of their platform now for podcasts. So if you're unfamiliar what that is, your RSS feed, to just put it into quick terms for you. Essentially, it's the back-end coding of your podcast. It's all the information that the podcast players can read in order to be able to serve up the sound and the description and title and all the other data about your episodes to the listeners. So that's called your RSS feed. And so now that YouTube is going to start creating RSS feeds, that means they're going to be bringing in podcasting in natively into their platform to be hosted right then and there. So based on that news, I just want to give this quick mention of advice that I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. If you already have a podcast and it's hosted with a podcast hosting site, dedicated podcast hosting site like Buzzsprout, Libsyn, those kinds of companies, Captivate, stay there. Once YouTube makes this RSS feed natively available, don't port your show over. The reason is because once you do that, first of all, a couple of things. If you start creating only video-based shows or even just one single video episode, there are a lot of podcast players out there that will no longer play your show. You might have 3,000 episodes, but if you have one of those that's a video, you can't even submit the show onto that platform. So you want to avoid that like the plague. Okay. So keep your show hosted audio only on Buzzsprout, Libsyn, whatever. Also, another thing is because if YouTube has your RSS feed, who's to say that they might not dynamically insert ads and that you don't have any control over that? So you have more control on other hosting platforms. So in my opinion, do not move your hosting to YouTube for their RSS feed. But I just want to let you know that because they're bringing in RSS feeds, that means they are really leaning into podcasting. Okay. Also, you can now, this isn't exactly new, but there's an impact of this that is very new and very huge. So I'll tell you about it in a second, but you can label any of your playlists on your YouTube channel as a podcast. Okay. So what that's going to end up doing is sending, because they're going to start sending podcasts, anything in YouTube that's labeled as a podcast, as a playlist. They're going to start sending those playlists, those podcast playlists, to their YouTube Music app. The podcast will soon be available on the YouTube Music app. So if your show is available on YouTube as a podcast, whenever YouTube turns on that function and starts sending podcasts over to that their YouTube Music app, yours will be there. So it's really important for us to talk about that. So I'm going to give you some action items related to that. And also, the last thing I want to mention in terms of news, this is true news, is that YouTube is really leaning into shorts. So short form content, a la, TikTok, Instagram Reels, those kinds of things. But specifically, what YouTube considers short form content is 60 seconds or less. So your video has to be under 60 seconds. But what it's doing is now really leaning into that, is serving that up like crazy. Personally, I've been testing this on my own show for the last few weeks, and I can promise you my shorts, anything under 60 seconds, gets like hundreds times the views of anything else, any of my regular content. It's crazy. So you definitely want to lean into creating short form content now on YouTube. So what does that mean? All of this information. Let me give you 3 immediate action items that I want you to take, like literally today. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is to create your YouTube podcast playlist. So first things first, if your episodes aren't in YouTube, or actually, no, first things first. If you don't have a YouTube channel, create one. Okay. So create a YouTube channel. Then if you add your episodes, so if you have a YouTube channel and you don't have your episodes loaded in there, make sure you load in all of your past episodes. If you don't have videos of it, no worries. It just means taking the static image of your episode art or show art at least and marrying it to your vocals for that episode and then spitting out, generating an MP4, a video file, and that you can load up to YouTube. So get all of your episodes, even if they're static images, just get them all onto YouTube. Then once you have all the episodes, create a playlist of your episodes and add all your episodes to it and name that playlist the exact same name as your podcast. So it's easily identifiable and related in people's minds as soon as they see it. What I want you to do is label that playlist as a podcast. Okay. So you've created the playlist. So if you go into your channel content section of your YouTube suite, then click on the playlist tab. Then once you hover over your new playlist, there's some little options, that little buttons that pop up, one of which is this little 3 dots. Click on those 3 dots and a new mini menu will pop up. And one of the options is set as podcast. That's what you want to hit. Okay. It'll change it from being a standard playlist into specifically a podcast playlist. And you'll actually see the playlist, like the little symbol on the playlist itself, go from little lines to looking like a microphone with some sound waves coming out of it. So that does 2 things. Now, that very simple quick action does 2 things. It creates on your YouTube channel, you have that podcast tab. Now that playlist is on that tab. So when people find your channel, they now see you have a podcast. Okay. So it's right there. But more importantly, in my opinion, what it does is it sets it up so that when YouTube turns on the functionality to send all of these playlists labeled as podcast to their music app to then be played as podcasts. Yours will be one of the first. It'll be grandfathered right in. Okay. Now, here's something I want to make sure you do. After you set it as a playlist, go into the settings for that. After you set it as a podcast, go into the settings for it. And you want to make sure that you add in show art. Okay, this is crucially important, or as it won't end up being played on the music app. So you have to have your show art 1400 by 1400 pixels up to 3000 by 3000. And then you also want to go ahead and enter in your description, because of course that's going to help you be discovered on the YouTube music app. So, or on the YouTube regular platform, whatever. Make sure you add in your description. Okay. Now, one last thing I want you to do is go back to where you have that this is the next thing I want you to do. Okay. So next thing I want you to do is, now that you've set up your playlist, you set it up as a podcast, once YouTube turns on the functionality, you're going to be golden because you added the show art, you're good to go. So the next thing I want you to focus on doing today, the second action item, is to add your podcast playlist as a section on your channel's main page. Okay. So if you go to Flint Stone Media's YouTube channel, you will see that there are several sections on the main page, different playlists and things like that. And one of those is for podcasting your brand. That's a playlist based off of a podcast labeled playlist based off of this show. And it's as a section on my YouTube channel. Now, how are you going to do it is simply go to your channel, then click Customize Channel. Scroll down to where it says featured sections and then click to add a section, and then choose single playlist and then click on the playlist for your show. And that'll now add it to your YouTube channel. It'll be the last section. So if you have multiple sections already set up, you can then drag it up, somewhere towards the top, make it the first or second section so people see it, give it the prominence that it deserves, right? So that's what I want you to do. So you've created your podcast, your playlist, set it up as a podcast. That was step 1, action item number 1. Action item number 2, make sure you add that playlist to the main page of your YouTube channel. Okay. The third action item I want you to do today is to begin brainstorming your short form content. Okay. Like I mentioned, YouTube is really leaning into shorts. It's amazing. Hundreds times the views as mentioned. So think about a couple of different things. One thing to brainstorm is what can you pull from your show as highlight clips? So whether you ever intend to ever have a full video version of your show or not, which we'll discuss in a second, you at least should turn the cameras on anyway. Okay. Because then you might be able to pull a couple of clips, a clip or two from your show that are a great highlight that you can then share on social media. I've been using audiograms since like forever. Okay. Audiograms being a static image with the vocals and a sound wave on it. And that served well for a little while, but those don't get the traction they used to. Now you really, if you can get the visuals from the podcast recording itself, that gets a lot more traction. So turn the cameras on anyway, at least to record that. What highlight clips can you pull from your show to share as shorts on YouTube or other social media? And then also, what additional short form content that's not native to your podcast? What additional content can you create? I want you to brainstorm about that. So it's going to be content that's related to the value add of your show, content that is related to the lifestyle of and needs of your ideal listener, but it's not necessarily something you're sharing specifically on your show. So a couple of ideas that I personally do. One, every single day, I hope you realize this by now because I've mentioned it, I do a daily tip on podcasting every day. So that's one piece of short form content I do directly related to this show. And actually then it gets repurposed into these episodes. So it's fun. Also, another thing that I've been doing on socials is, and sometimes these run a little bit long, so I don't always get these under 60 seconds. I'm going to try to get better at these, but it's what's that in your studio, producer Jemmy? So I just show off something that I love or that I've made or that I've won or whatever in my studio, just to get people more of a look into what I do. So now, obviously, a daily podcasting tip, a look into my studio. Those are all related somewhat to my podcasting and the value of this show. So whatever the value is of your show, you don't have to do podcasting tips. Whatever the value is of your show, look at that and start to think of what can I pull from the show that I can share? And then what additional stuff can I talk about? So is there a parenting tip you can give an idea every day or a note of inspiration? Oh, and by the way, it doesn't have to be every day. It can be like every few days or once a week or whatever, just something that gets some short form content under 60 seconds into your YouTube channel on a regular basis. Okay. So to recap the three action items I want you to take today, create your YouTube podcast playlist and set it as a podcast. Okay. Get it set up. Then add that playlist. Number 2, add that playlist to your channel's main page as a section. And number 3, begin brainstorming what kind of short form content you can put together that's going to support your show and be served up on YouTube as YouTube Shorts. Okay. Now I have 2 more suggestions that I want you to really strongly consider taking. Okay. I want you to consider, even if you don't do a video-based show, I want you to consider doing a video-based show. So that doesn't mean that your intention needs to be focused on it being video-based. It just means turn the cameras on. Okay. And if you're going to do that, rather than using Zoom or something, because Zoom wasn't really built with podcasting in mind, Riverside FM is what I use. It's phenomenal. It gives you high quality audio and video. So I prefer something like that. So there's a link in the show notes for Riverside FM. There's always a link in the show notes for Riverside FM. To be fair, I'm an affiliate, but I love them. Otherwise I wouldn't be. But there are other options as well. Zencaster, a couple that comes to mind. But anyways, so upgrade from, Zoom, if you're using Zoom, to something else, and then turn those cameras on and consider doing a video-based show at some point, putting out full video-based episodes. And they can go on YouTube. They can also be used on Facebook. You never know. It can be part of a portfolio. So video-based show. And then so this is something that I heard. I was like, what? How did I not know this earlier? Okay, this is really, really cool. Whether you do this today or you do this tomorrow, please just do this, okay? in YouTube, in your back end, you can actually look at what your subscribers are searching for. What? Yes, it'll tell you what search terms your subscribers are entering. So you can look at those search terms and pull out anything that's related to your show as a clue for what you can put in a future episode. Oh my gosh. And especially if you're leaning into using YouTube and that content ends up on YouTube, especially if you do it really, really quickly and it's timely, then it's timely. It's topical. When people are searching for it now, they'll be searching for it next week and they will find that episode. So that's an extra little clue for you. So consider doing your full episodes on video. Also consider using, definitely look into what your subscribers are searching for by going to the back end of your YouTube channel. But the bottom line is YouTube is finally, I mean, they've had their reasons and I haven't been able to argue with them. It's been legit, but they are finally really, really leaning into our community. They're the second biggest search engine in the world. It's time to lean back. Alrighty, now let's end with one more of my daily tips. Be sure that you're subscribed to me on social media so you get all of those and that you also get them first. I also want to draw your attention to a new feature at podcastingyourbrand.com. I'm now featuring the shows that are growing with me. So if you're listening to this show and it's helping you improve your podcasting, please let me know. Send me an email, Jaime, Jaime at flintstonemedia.com, and I'll put your show art with a link to your show in that section, just like you see back of the cereal box there. And also, if you have a question, email me there for that as well, and I'll put it in a future tip or make it a future episode. I would love to help you become a better podcaster. Literally, that is what I'm here for. All right. So it's producer Jaime signing off for now. Remember, the only thing more important than your voice is your spirit. Excuse me, I'm saying it wrong. Remember, the only thing more powerful than your voice is your spirit to use it. So turn that mic on right after this last daily tip. It is producer Jaime with your tip for today, continuing to focus on finding great guests. So I'll let you know about an app that you can use to find really amazing guests. It's called Owl. It's spelled with 2 W's and 2 L's, OWWLL. And it's an app designed to connect you with experts on demand, one-on-one. So what does this mean for finding great guests? Well, great question. I'll let you know. First of all, download the app using my code PL954123, and that's going to give you a $10 credit. Then use that $10 credit by going into the app, searching by your show's topic, and looking at the slew of experts that magically appear for you, and then tapping on their bios to see what they're about, and then use that $10 credit to hit the button to call them right there and then. And you'll be able to figure out right then and there if they're going to be a great guest and if you guys have good chemistry. So it's a good app for not only discovering, but then like really easily pre-interviewing your guests. So awesome. So come back here every day for more tips. Podcastingyourbrand.com. I'm producer Jaime.